Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the story of people all over the world making a difference in the lives of others. They do this globally, they do this locally, they do it digitally. It is such an opportunity that we have to share these stories that are about Rotary's focus on service above self. The joy and meaning that come from serving others is something that is absolutely central to the way Rotary works. Rotary is 1.2 million people in 36,000 clubs around the world, and we are one of them. The Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley is not just online, it is asynchronous because we believe there are a load of people out there who have a heart for service but are insanely busy and need a highly flexible option, or just like the global focus we have and the cool speakers we get. Speaking of cool speakers, our speaker today is Meghan Wood of Rhea Power. I am really excited about this for multiple reasons. I think the topic is fascinating, but also because she has done her work with her partner and team there in Puerto Rico for all sorts of reasons. That has been the focus, and as it is a special place for me and my wife, I am absolutely excited for that to be part of the story. Meghan, we are really proud to have you as a guest this week. So I am going to hand this over to you. The mic is yours. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for spending time listening to this and learning more. Very excited to be here. My journey with solar actually starts with a connection to the Rotary Club. I don't know if I told you this, but I did a volunteer solar installation with Sunwork in California, and the Rotary Club was one of the sponsors of it. And that just got me so excited, continually excited about solar. So, love what you all do and really happy to get the opportunity to speak to you today. So, as I'm going to go through a quick presentation of why we're working on this, why we think it's important, and what we've built, and then we'll talk a bit more about myself, my co-founder, and our journey from Puerto Rico to the rest of the US, and then excited to answer your questions afterwards. So, as you see here, we are Raya Power, and we believe the sun belongs to everyone. And ever since getting my system in my backyard, I look at it and I'm like, if something isn't working, I'm like, why aren't I using the sun today? And it's a really cool feeling when you actually can harness this thing that's rising every day for you. So, at Raya Power, we've designed the world's first integrated battery and solar appliance. You can see a photo here of our first pilot installation. And to us, we imagine the future of residential solar and storage as a world where it's as simple and as normal as getting a table at IKEA. So, how does this become an everyday item that people get at their home rather than something out of the ordinary? And the reason we really started this was outages keep rising as well as electricity prices. So many of you know and are feeling this already, but last year in the US, 1 in 4 homes lost power, and the DOE thinks this could 100x by 2030. And residential electricity prices have risen 40% since 2021. So massive impact on people. Apart from the impact, this is driving a massive market for solar and battery solutions, and particularly home battery solutions. We've seen a 33% CAGR. So huge growth in people looking for solutions to solve these problems. At Raya, we believe that most of these solutions today really leave out most people. To get rooftop solar or home storage, you need to own your home. You have to have a new roof. You have to go through a whole permitting process. It can take lots of time. And most people actually can't afford or access these solutions today, but they are left with those problems. So we looked at that and thought, how could we make a solution that would fit for everyone? What if you didn't need a new roof? What if you didn't need to own your home? What if the entry price was much more accessible? What if there was an aftermarket? You could sell it to someone else after. What if the install was super fast? So how do we change all these barriers to make the solution so much simpler for people to adopt? And that's how we came up with our modular integrated solar and battery appliance. So I'll play this video here while I talk over it just to show a bit more of how it works. So these are our pods. They're an all-in-one pod. Battery, inverter, electronics, ballast, solar panel. You put them down where you have access to the sun and you connect them to core appliances. So here you'll see inside plugging a fridge and fan in, outside connecting to the compressor of an air conditioner. These appliances that you've connect now run in parallel to the grid every day, kind of like a hybrid car. So whenever there's solar available, that will run those appliances, reducing your bill. When there's cloudy days and there's no sun, the grid will pass through our system and keep running those appliances. And in an outage, the batteries will automatically keep running those appliances. So what that does is it lets us actually come in between your home and those appliances and insert the solar and battery. And we do it in a way where the electrons all flow towards those appliances. So there's no backfeeding your home. And that's what enables us to not need utility permits or home permits. It lets you plop it down and choose those appliances. It's really simple to install. So we've created it in a way that there's no home modifications required. So it's renter friendly. And then we have financing options where you actually can save right away. By making those modulars one size fits all, where you can add more if you need them, that's what one creates an aftermarket. You could sell it to someone else if you are moving, or you could bring it with you. So those are all the ways we kind of designed our system to ensure it radically could work for most people as long as you had space outside and a sunny spot. And we're working actively to build different systems as well to fit people who don't have space for these. As a company, just a bit on us. So last year we raised $1 million in a pre-seed round, which is very exciting. And that let us go out and do all this learning. We tried to install a bunch of different versions of our system and eventually came up with this design as this aesthetically pleasing version to have everything in one spot and easy to install. We did a lot in a year. It was my co-founder, myself, and some awesome contractors, advisors, supporters, and we manufactured and installed these systems. And also got a pilot with the Environmental Defense Fund, which is very exciting, to install 10 units in Puerto Rico. And I'll talk more about that after. We had this cool coverage of Canary media of us on the right of our first installs. And after that came out, their response was awesome. There's clearly tons of people who are looking for solutions and really excited about what we're building. So we got emails from across the US, from Europe, from Latin America. And a lot of the reason is one, resilience, as we're seeing with grid outages, two, bill savings, and then three, also expanded electrical capacity. So things like running an EV or running a pool pump. How can you do more at your home as you're electrifying? And we think we've built something really different. So when we look at rooftop solar and storage, as we mentioned, most people are locked out of that. If you're locked out of that and you need resilience, your options are really a portable battery or a fuel generator. Where we are drastically different is by integrating the solar. So by putting that solar panel on there, every day you're generating electricity, which means you're not only getting resilience, but you're getting paid to have resilience. So you can actually pay the system off versus a battery where kind of sits in your closet until you need it and it's just a cost. So for us, that was really important, is how do we integrate the generation so that every day it's running for you, and that makes it a lot more accessible to more people. Balcony solar, you may have seen this in the news, very exciting progress, especially for apartments. Where it's different from Raya is it's more limited in size, and because it backfeeds your home, it can't actually provide automatic resilience because it has to go off when the grid goes off. And they're still working through some hurdles on the UL and National Electric Code point of view to actually make it safe to plug in. So that's what we love about ours right now, is it's legal everywhere and can be scalable in size as well as that resilience. And here's some pictures of our pilots. So we did start in Puerto Rico, and I'll get to that in our founding story a little bit later, but you'll see some installs here in Puerto Rico, some in California, and the response from the customers has just been so amazing so far. One of my favorites is solar rice. So one of our pilot customers does their rice cooker on our system and calls it solar rice to their kids, which to me is just kind of the ultimate goal of how do we make this so much more the norm of something we talk about, that the sun made your rice. People being able to buy groceries for more than a few days because they know their fridge will stay on, or throwing an extension cord out to help their neighbors. So it's really exciting to see already, just with our pilots, the impact we're able to have, and we're really looking forward to scale that. And so a bit more about us and the team. So I'm our CEO and co-founder. I'm from Canada. I started my career as a management consultant at Bain. And while I loved the work we were doing, I felt like we weren't talking about climate. I was at a gold mine in northern Canada and saw the amount of work we were doing to get these rocks out of the ground, to process gold, to put it back in a bar, to put it back underground in a safe. And I thought, what a ridiculous use of our resources. And I really wanted to do something more for climate. So I started working with the Nature Conservancy, loved what they were doing, but I didn't exactly know where I wanted to kind of have that impact. tried to become an engineer, but with a business undergrad, no one lets you into an engineering master's program. So I found this great program at Stanford that did an MBA as well as a master's of science in sustainable energy, and was lucky enough to get in there and just fell in love with energy in general and how, our lights turn on and we just expect them to go on, but there's so many things that happen behind that. And when I started learning more about solar, I just thought, what a cool thing, this physical asset that you could bring home and make money. Instead of putting your money in the stock market, buy a solar panel. And I couldn't understand why more people didn't have it. So I started digging deeper and saw all of those barriers of today, residential solar, 25% of the cost is customer acquisition costs. So if you spend $5,000 to get a customer, you now have to put this huge system on the roof to make your economics work. And that kind of becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. So how do you really change the way people buy this product to reduce that customer acquisition costs and be able to sell smaller systems? So I became kind of the solar lady there, and I was at a friend's wedding while doing my MBA, and I got introduced to Nicole because someone said, "You're both solar nerds, you got to talk to each other." And Nicole's journey starts, so her first job was at NASA. She was working on, I guess not job, her career. I'm sure she had jobs before that. Started at NASA, and she was working on the Mars rover. While she was there, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, and that's where her family's all from. And she was sitting at work, struck with the realization that she could send solar panels to Mars and couldn't get them to her family. And maybe don't quote me on the Mars part, to space. um, and she just had this moment of, I want to be working on products that are helping people like that on a daily basis. And that brought her to Stanford, where she did a master's in product design with a focus on social impact. So, how do we design for extremes? How do we design for people who aren't built for today? And then typically that ends up working for everyone else. And so she was actively looking at solar and battery from a resilience point of view. And then our paths crossed, and we started having coffee together on campus and thinking through all the different ways that we could put a system like this together. And it's just been so incredible to work together over the past few, I guess now year to 2 years on this. And we have an awesome group of contractors and advisors. We've been so overwhelmed by the support. I'm sure you guys feel this as well when you're doing something with a good mission. People want to help, which is so lovely to see. And so just great help from people across product expertise to social media to PR to investing. And so very, very thankful for the community who's helped us here. And that's mainly what I have. Maybe just the other 2 cents on Puerto Rico and why we started there. So Nicole was obviously a big impetus for that, but we got into a program there called Parallel 18. And I went there in January of last year. And when I arrived to just learn more about the island, it's immediately clear how important these solutions are. So, electricity prices are high there, but the outages are so frequent that solar panels and batteries and generators become part of the normal conversation. So, your Uber driver talks to you about their solar panels, and the mall has a generator store. And it just makes you realize when you don't have a reliable grid and when you have electricity prices going up, how things like solar and batteries aren't just climate solutions, they're actually just better solutions to a daily problem. And so as we continue to see increasing outages, increasing prices in places outside of just Puerto Rico, that's kind of what it becomes. And so there's just so much opportunity there to help a lot of people and create a lot of impact for everyone on the island who can't access rooftop solar and storage. And we've just had phenomenal support there as well. And the island's amazing. It's been so nice to be there. And we're kicking off the pilot soon with Environmental Defense Fund with a goal of growing more systems there too. Um, yeah, so that's all I had prepared, but I'm happy to jump in with any spot that'd be more interesting to dive into more and any questions you have.
Sounds good, Megan. Let's start by just getting the group back up. I'd like to introduce the crowd that we got as we move into the Q&A. So first, from our club here in the San Francisco Bay Area is Susan, up in San Francisco, and down in Arizona is Dave. I am in San Jose. We have a special guest with us as a part of the recording today. That's Amy. She and Gus are the two minds behind Fix the News down in Australia. That's my weekly dose of hope for the future. Great stuff. So, Megan, I'll start with this. When when you and Nicole, right?
Yeah.
Gonzalez. All right, when you and Nicole started things, you had met here in the Bay Area, you had met at Stanford. Was there something that got you into the headspace of like, hey, we can totally make this a legit startup?
Hmm. I would say Stanford itself is an incredible place for that in in a confidence building and a world of possibilities. I love going back to campus even now because it's just this bubble where you feel like anything is possible. And so I think that was probably the first step in it is feeling surrounded by people who tell you why not? Like why wouldn't you go and try this? And we'll help you connect you to the right people to do it and get your initial funding. Like our first round was a lot of support from Stanford. And like folks we had met around Stanford. So that was just a huge impetus for feeling like this could be real. And then the other part of it, I would say, is we got a lot of inspiration from the do-it-yourself world in solar. There's a big do-it-yourself world where people are putting things together and coming up with their own solutions. And it makes you realize it's not rocket science, but it's very annoying to do. And so in building our own systems from that, we're like, well, from a physics point of view, will this work? Yes, it'll work. It's how do you package it in a way that is seamless for customers, that is cost effective, that is aesthetically pleasing. A lot of the questions we got a year ago when we were raising was like, I don't know how 3 panels will look in the backyard. And now people are like, I want one of those. That looks awesome. So it's how do you actually add all that devil in the details, I guess, to it to make it a product for customers. But what was nice is we knew like the technology at its core is not, it's not novel at that point. And so yeah, to me, that was something I learned at Stanford too, is we were all focused on like shooting stuff into clouds to prevent climate change. And I'm like, what if we just got a lot more solar panels out or like a lot more wind turbines? Like we have a lot of tech that we know works, but we need better business models and packages to actually get it out.
So clearly, the kinds of partnerships you were able to pursue were important, right? And I'll have several questions along these lines. But Susan asks, really good one, which is, when you think about different places around the world, Puerto Rico is a fantastic model for getting this going, right? There are all kinds of spots where service clubs, groups of citizens in the community just wanting to make things better, might serve as a partner of in some fashion for how you work. Do you have a different business model for those kinds of interactions than you do for consumer facing stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're kind of at the part of our business of building out those different channels, and we're very excited to work with groups like that. So, for example, with the Environmental Defense Fund, they are working on identifying the homes, educating the homes, and then we provide the installation and the product. And so there's like a nice partnership there. We've gotten some inbound from utilities asking if we could provide the products in different neighborhoods. We would love to work with communities. The other one we've heard about, recently been thinking about more and especially after the Super Bowl with Bad Bunny's performance, was can we do some type of also donation where people, if they'd like, could donate systems to different places they cared about at an individual basis or at a group basis? So working with people who have donor advised funds and maybe purchase one for yourself and donate one or donate a certain amount. So we're very excited to be able to scale the business in the more units we have out in the world, the more impact we have, and finding different ways to do that with aligned people. Absolutely.
So in doing this, you end up with stories, right? Stories that allow for partnerships, stories that allow for these opportunities to talk to groups of folks that are just trying to make the world better. My guess is that there's been some really interesting individual stories. Amy asks if there's a story from a customer that
Mm,
really stands out, something where it really brings the human part of the work you're doing into the fore.
yeah. Well, so the one pilot customer we have, when we had our first call with him to see how the system was going, he was like, I now know how it feels to have the dignity of having first world energy. And it's something that, like Puerto Rico being part of the US, like you would imagine would have, but it doesn't have. And it's in the small behavior changes of the leaving for work and not worrying that $1,000 of groceries is going to go old, like going to the store and buying something you can put in the freezer for the week, keeping your Wi-Fi on if you need to work from home, like just in all those small ways, but that make a really big difference. And it's hard to know until you live in a place with outages, like that additional weight you carry, because it's just kind of there always. I can't speak to it firsthand from growing up in that, but from being in Puerto Rico a lot over the past year, feeling that, it's like you're always kind of on guard and ready for the unexpected. And so that's been really nice to feel with our customers. Another one, she put her gas generator on Facebook Marketplace. So that was really nice. We hear a lot of, I don't want my parents using a gas generator. It's unsafe. I get worried about them. They break all the time, and then you're in line for the diesel. And so I think what frustrates us is not having more out in the world faster, especially with everything going on right now. It's just like, oh my God, if we could have more of these in people's hands as electricity prices keep going up and there's more uncertainty, it would just be so nice. We were in Puerto Rico when Jamaica got hit by the hurricane, and it was like, how many can you get on a plane? And I'm like, we're such a small startup right now, like not enough to make a difference. And so, how can we really move fast here and do more? Because it feels like we can have a lot of great impact.
Well, one of the places where the sun shines quite amazingly consistently here in the U.S. is in Arizona, and Dave I know has a question or two. So Dave, jump in and let's get you involved.
Hi, Megan. I love this idea you have. I got questions. I got to look at my notes. Um, you mentioned that your appliances connect directly to the appliance rather than to the circuit breaker panel. Is that right? How does that work? How do you get from the device
Correct.
to the appliance?
Yeah, great question. In addition to that, while I'm showing you, I'll show you my system,
Oh,
which you can
cool.
see up there.
Oh, very good.
So I have one up here in the Bay, and then we have one in Palo Alto as well. So if you're ever in California, um, but how it actually works, so that system is out there, and there's a few different options. I'll try to make this as simple as possible. So let's say you just want to do a self-install 120-volt plug option. You basically need to choose where those cables come into your home. So in our pilot installs, people have been fine with drilling a hole in the wall, kind of like you would for Wi-Fi entry, but you also could do a window entry I have here with this like piece of foam, and you can actually, it looks very seamless. You bring that in the home and you have a Raya Smart Strip. So that's where you can plug your appliances into. Typically, you will choose one that goes to a larger appliance. So a window air conditioner, a dehumidifier, a water heater, something that is drawing more electricity to make sure you use the full system every day. So that's kind of one connection point. Then the second one is typically like an outage protection. So people like to put it in their kitchen where they put fridge, fans, Wi-Fi, stuff they want to make sure automatically stays on in an outage. So that's how you connect the loads to Raya. And then there's a second point that would plug into the wall where you used to plug appliances into. And that's how we get grid power towards Raya. So if you have a couple cloudy days and you want the grid power to flow through our system towards those appliances, it pulls like it would a normal appliance from your existing outlet. So you just kind of take your appliance out, put Raya in, and put your appliance into Raya. So that's kind of the most basic one. And then otherwise, we could connect at sort of the compressor outside of an air conditioner or something.
Cool. Have you thought about doing any commercial applications?
So we've thought about in like small businesses, I would say more so. One of our pilots is with a hydroponic farm. So when the outages happen, their pumps don't work and they could lose all their crops. So we've looked at that, and also sort of like mom and pop coffee shops. At a commercial level, like large scale, not really yet. I would say our design specifically works quite well for residential. If I was
Mhm.
designing for commercial, I may think through things a little differently.
Yeah. What's the approximate cost for one unit? And how many units typically does a small single family home need?
Yeah. So right now we sell them as a collection of three, those
Okay.
three pods you saw in my yard. Each one has a 450-watt solar panel. So together it's about 1.35 kilowatts of solar. And in that set of three, you can either have one or two batteries, so 2.5 or 5 kilowatt hours of battery. That's sized really well for running that one appliance, like the mini split air conditioner, the window air conditioner, and then also for fridge fans Wi-Fi, if you wanted that in an outage, basically running that for 24 hours. So in our app, you can prioritize what you want to keep on in an outage. So you'd probably say, hey, you know what? Don't worry about the air conditioner, but keep my fridge, fans, and Wi-Fi running for 24 hours. So that's sized well to do that. And then you could add more if you'd like. So typically when we're looking at our target customers, which is kind of that middle income home, you're picking something to get a return on investment. So in California, those 3 pods would save you about $80 a month. And then you're picking things you want to keep on in an outage that are critical for you. So it's not going to cover your whole home. If like you're in a scenario where you can do rooftop solar and storage, we're always like, go for it. That's great. You cover everything. Most people that we talk to can't. And so that's where this becomes a great offset of critical appliances and still pays off for itself.
That sounds great. I have some more questions, but I'll pause for now. And if there's more time, I'll ask for more questions. Thank you.
I'd say our chances are good on that front. So let's look at the similarities between this and like balcony solar. You have that really good slide that shows kind of the differences in the different systems. But when someone is considering Raya, is it the integration with the battery that makes it more of a choice as opposed to what they might be getting through some kind of balcony system?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Let's say, assuming balcony solar was fully able to happen from a regulatory point of view, then correct. The integrated battery means that the way we flow to appliances, because we're connected directly to them, we automatically stay on in an outage. So your fridge stays on. If you had balcony solar with, let's say, a battery and there was an outage, you then would need to run an extension cord to whatever you wanted in that outage because it's not typically, when the grid goes off, it can't keep backfeeding the home. So maybe let me show a quick diagram of how the electrons flow. It's not the prettiest photo, but it may help explain this a bit better. So this is an example of balcony solar. So you have the panel on the balcony and you plug it into an outlet, right? And what it's doing is actually just flowing through your existing home wires. So there's a few things here. One, if you're flowing back more than you're using, your utility meter will notice it. So that's what's been happening at the policy level. They've been pushing for interconnection rules to be reduced so that you can backfeed a certain amount without needing it. The main issue that we see with balcony solar still is actually from a safety, so from a National Electric Code and UL point of view. So let's say this circuit here that you already have at your home is 15 amps on a breaker. Normally, if you were to plug in this hair dryer and this fridge, for example, total, there's 17 amps, right? 12 and 5. That would flip off your breaker. It would say there's too much current on this circuit. We're going to turn it off. What the theory of what could happen with balcony solar is this generation could go and serve one of these. So let's say the generation is running your fridge in theory. The breaker panel only sees the net difference. So it's only going to see the hair dryer. It doesn't see that there's 5 amps of solar feeding the 5 amps of fridge. And so you actually could end up with more current on the wires that are in your home than they're rated for. So that's the main safety risk that right now National Electric Code says you need to plug into a dedicated circuit. But most people don't have available extra dedicated circuits in their home unless they had an electrician come and install them. So we view that as a main hurdle today. So even though there's some movement happening until National Electric Code or UL says, hey, you can backfeed this amount with no problem into any outlet, we think it's hard to see that adoption really growing. What we saw happen in Germany was their equivalent of UL said you can backfeed 800 watts, no problem. Our wires all have a margin of error on them. You're not going to start a fire. So that's kind of where we see the gap today. And so that's how we've designed ours differently, where Raya, this is the existing circuit in your home. It's just pulling generation towards it, electricity. And so if it were to pull more than was required, for example, the breaker would still flip off. It hasn't overdone any existing safety in your home. And then we connect to core appliances on the other side of our strip. And that's why when there's an outage, so the grid goes out here, we can keep running those appliances because we have the battery. But with the plug-in solar, if it's feeding back to your home and the grid goes out, it needs to shut off, right? Because or else you could have live wires for someone working on the electricity. So that's kind of where ours has the automatic backup and is scalable in size because of where we've put it in that circuit. Is that clear?
Uh, well, it is exactly the kind of cool science that I like to get exposed to. That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more about Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico, and the opportunity to work with some really interesting people there. I mean, like my having made several trips to San Juan, I mean, I really feel like, hey, that's a place where people are having a lot of cool ideas. They're working with a lot of energy. What are you seeing in the culture, in the community, in the partners that make you think about Puerto Rico the way you do?
Hmm. I think there's this incredible entrepreneurial spirit, but in a way that you don't see maybe in Silicon Valley. Like here, it's very focused on like what is the next unicorn that you can build in AI or something. In Puerto Rico, it's a lot more focused on like what's that great business that I can build that will create jobs locally and let me stay here and build a livelihood here. And so there's a much more diverse entrepreneurship footprint, I would say, which is really lovely to be a part of. It was nice to leave kind of the Stanford bubble and get to Puerto Rico where there's a lot more different problems being solved and things worked on. And so that was lovely. And the entrepreneurship community is quite tight knit as well. So because it is a small place overall, you end up with seeing a lot of the same people at the events, and that makes it really easy to build strong relationships across the island. And so once we were there for a while, we really saw that compound. Like some of those early relationships we had continued to help, and now we continue to, go back to those same people and continue to build out those relationships in an easier way, I would say, because of that kind of small pond opportunity. Um, and people are just very lovely and eager for new ideas and new things. I think it's been really nice to watch Nicole, her focus on Puerto Rico from the start has brought us there. And then that's kind of a snowball that keeps growing, which is people say like manifesting, but it's wherever you put your energy is where things end up happening. And so I think that's been really nice to see is just one step after another. Things keep snowballing into this awesome opportunity to be in Puerto Rico, and hopefully make a big impact there.
Well, I know I have more questions. I know Dave does, and I'm sure that Susan and Amy do as well. And one of the benefits of doing what we do with the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley is after we stop recording, if the speaker has time, we keep asking questions. There's such cool people out there doing great things, and we get the chance to talk to them. It's pretty awesome. But in the interest of time, in the interest of making sure that this video or this podcast, however you're encountering it, is something that is running an acceptable length, an accepted length. What we'll do is we'll wind things down now. I want to thank everybody for taking your time to catch the stories that we share. Find out more at rotary.cool. That will get you to us. And we love that we have so many stories available to anyone there. No need to log in, no tracking, no scammy, spammy stuff or anything like that. Uh, as we always like to do, though, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. So, Megan, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish up this audio or video recording?
Yeah, maybe the last thing is if this excited you and you want to get involved or you want to help, there's a few different ways. So one is we're about to kick off raising our seed round. So from an investment point of view, two would be from that donor side, building out the impact where it matters most to you. If there's communities that you really want to see this in, we'd love to hear from you and love to partner with people. And then three, just if you have cool ideas and you want to chat, feel free to send an email, info@rayapower.com. You can also go to our website and there's a contact us there. And follow our social media. I think we have one of the most fun Instagrams of an energy company. So go and check that out if you're on Instagram.
Sounds great. Everyone, thank you so much. We will see you next week.